Dear friends, today we're going to be able to talk to one of the icons of the resistance, not just the resistance with respect to the corona pandemic, as everybody should know now, it's a pandemic, not a pandemic, but the resistance to everything that this great reset embodies, really. It's David Icke. We've been wanting to talk to each other for quite a while. Finally, it's working out. This is probably not going to be the last time. David, the most important question I have, how did you get into this? What made you look into all these sometimes very dark areas of reality way before most of us did?
Well, it's an extraordinary story, really, because I was a professional footballer. Then my career finished with rheumatoid arthritis. I then became a journalist on newspapers and on radio and then television. I was a news and then sports journalist with the BBC and presenter with the BBC. And then I got involved briefly with the Green Party, which wasn't quite so insane in those days. But I think it was beginning to get there, but not quite. But it was very, very useful to me to see that arena. And also to see the political arena and realize it doesn't matter what the color of the rosette, the mentality is still the same. They really are a software program, politicians, no matter what they call themselves. And then, some extraordinary things happened to me. In 1989, when I was a national spokesman for the Green Party and we had a big election success in European elections, some very strange things were happening to me. From the early part of 1989, if I was in a room alone, it was like I wasn't alone. And this built up and built up and built up through the year. And I'm going, what the hell? It just feels like there's something here. And in the March of 1991, March of 1990, this had got so tangible that I was sitting in a hotel. It was the Kensington Hilton, which is just down the road from the BBC in Shepherd's Bush in London. I'd just done a program with them, and I'm sat in this hotel room, and I looked out into the room. This whatever you call it, presence was so tangible and so powerful by this time. I said, "Would you please contact me if there's something there? Because you're driving me up the bloody wall." And it was only about a week later that this is really a strange story. And if you put it in a B movie, they'd say, "Oh, come on." You put it in an A movie, they'd say, "Come on." But it actually happened. So I was with my son Gareth, who's now a strapping guy who's really involved in this as well, just down the seafront from where I'm talking now. Somebody stopped me in the street to talk about football in the BBC and stuff. And then I realized that Gareth was not there anymore. And I knew where he was. He was in a newsagent shop just to my right. And he was looking through some books and stuff. And I walked in and I said to him, "Gav, come on, we'll go and get some lunch up in the town." Right? He's only a little boy. And at that point, it was like the atmosphere changed around me completely. I now realized the electromagnetic field changed and my feet started being pulled to the ground like magnets. And it wasn't a voice, but it was a very strong thought form that I didn't generate anyway, which said, "Go and look at the books on the far side." What? So I'm in a daze and I'm walking across to these books, and I knew this bookshop very well. They were Mills and Boon, Barbara Cartland romantic novels that they sold to the tourists on the beach. And so what? And I went across, and in the middle was a book. It was called Mind to Mind by what turned out to be a professional psychic called Betty Shine. And I picked it up and I turned it over and I looked at the blurb, and I saw the word psychic. Now, I've never been to psychics or anything at this time. I didn't know anything about it. But my immediate reaction was, I wonder if this woman could pick up what the hell has been happening to me for the last year. So I went to see her. I went a couple of times and we had a chat. And what I told her was, "Look, I've got arthritis. Maybe your hands-on healing might be able to help." I didn't want to give her any idea of what was happening to me. Nothing. I said anything. And then the third visit, I went 4 times. She's in the hands-on healing mode on my left knee, and then I was feeling like a spider's web on my face, which I now know is an electromagnetic field. I didn't know it then. I just felt it's like a spider's web, and it hit me because I'd read in a book that when other dimensions of reality are trying to lock into you, you sometimes feel like a spider's web on your face. This is the electromagnetic connection, and I just said nothing to her, but about 10, 15 seconds later, she launches her head back and said, my God, I've got to close my eyes for this one. This is powerful. Now, my bum now is slipping further down this bench. What the hell is going on? And she said, I'm being told to tell you the following, basically, that I was going to go. This is March 1990. And I'm going to go out on a world stage and reveal great secrets. That there was a story that had to be told, and that people had to know basically the scale of or the nature of the world they lived in, because they were living in basically a world that wasn't like what they thought it was all that effect. And then I was going to go out on a world stage, and I was going to reveal great secrets, and I was going to be guided to knowledge. And at other times, knowledge would be put directly in my mind, and I'd think, where did that come from? And so on and so forth. One man cannot change the world, but one man can communicate the message that can change the world was another one. And I was about to leave her front room and go to the BBC, which I did, and present a television program. You know, it was like two dramatically different worlds were happening to me. But it was funny because my response should have been, in the rational world of normal, you are having a laugh, mate. What are you talking about? But something here said, go with this, go with this, go with this. And I thought, well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go with it and I'll see what happens. And almost from the time I left her front room, my life became this synchronistic journey of walking into people, personal experiences, documents, books, what have you, different sources of information that were new to me. And it was like being handed pieces in a puzzle. So you put them together, like putting a jigsaw together. And from that moment, this journey began. Very quickly after that, even though the BBC didn't know what was happening, they fired me, didn't renew my contract, and so suddenly I'm able to pursue this full time, at least for a while. There's no income. And what happened in the first few years of the 90s, all the information coming to me in this synchronistic way was about the here and now, the world that we see, and how the forces that appeared to be running the world, like presidents and prime ministers and all these people, were not. That actually there was another force behind all that was orchestrating everything. And all the information started to come about that. And then towards the end of the 90s, I went to America, and 1996. And I was talking to nobody. I mean, I talked to 5 people in someone's front room in New England, 8 people near Chicago. And this is what it was like. But what I was picking up on that trip in 1996, was I was walking into people like people in intelligence, people in the military, and they were in this amazing synchronistic way. They were giving me pieces in the puzzle, and I started to put it together, and then it went into the apparently crazy world of the non-human element of all this, and then after the turn of the millennium, it went into the big time, into the nature of reality and what this reality really is, and ultimately how this whole unfolding dystopia is being orchestrated. And it's just been an extraordinary journey where things have got bigger and bigger and bigger in terms of what this manipulation is. but also the more you know. They say the more you know that there is to know, but also the more you know, the simpler it gets. And what we have in the world, as I've seen from my own journey, is we are bombarded with information, events, happenings, and they seem so random, and they say, oh, this is happening and that's, well, why is that happening? Why do they do this like that? Well, why don't they do it like that? It'd be better, wouldn't it, if they did it like that? All these things are coming at us, and it makes basically no sense. I mean, why COVID? Why human-caused climate change? Why the transgender agenda? Well, how does it all fit? But it does. And you realize that all these random events that appear to be unexplainable, they all come back to one source and to one agenda, which is an agenda to subjugate the human population via complete control. And this is the stadium on which it's all played out. Control of perception. That is what it's all about. Because if you control perception, you control behavior. We behave as we do because we perceive as we do. So if you look at COVID, the people that believe the official story, they behaved in a certain way. They acquiesced, and yes, sir, no, sir. And people who didn't believe the official story or questioned it, they behaved in a different way. And the whole thing is perception. It's about controlling perception to control behavior. And what is collective behavior? It's human society. And so it's been a fantastic revelation to see how it all unfolded. And to realize, when I look back to how I saw the world in 1990, the scale of deceit is absolutely fantastic, right down to the very foundation of the reality that we think we're experiencing. It's actually nothing like how we experience it. It's completely different. And what you've got is a global network, which I call the global cult. It's the global network of secret societies, fiercely compartmentalized. So Bill and Joe down the lodge in the Freemasons haven't got a bloody clue what it's all about. It's fiercely compartmentalized. But you have this network, and this network keeps secrets. What secrets? One, the secret of where the world's being taken. So to the population, everything seems random when it's absolutely coordinated. And crucially, number two, keep from them the nature of reality. Because if you can keep people in ignorance of the very reality they're experiencing, the very nature of what they are, then you can manipulate them from that knowledge, while they'll dismiss it and say, well, that's ridiculous. That can't happen. They'd never do that. And what you find is this global cult created the education system. In America, for instance, it created the education system via the Rockefellers. It created Big Pharma, not least by the Rockefellers and J.D. Rockefeller, created the World Health Organization through the Rockefellers, and so on and so forth it goes. And what they've done, and they own, this cult owns the global media. It owns Silicon Valley. It created Silicon Valley. And so what you have is the sources of information from which people form their perceptions is controlled by this cult, which doesn't want them to know anything more than they need to know just to basically do what the cult wants them to do, which is just get on with their lives while having no idea that they're controlled at all, never mind how.
This is exactly the conclusion that I have arrived at. And I have only, if you want to call it that, woken up through the pandemic. I have always known, I mean, Paul is far ahead of me. You're far ahead of me. Dagmar, who's an experienced attorney from Munich, she's far ahead of me. But over the last 3 years, I have learned so many things that I think I'm beginning to see not just the pieces of the puzzle, but not the entire picture, but much of the entire picture. Like last week, we did an interview with Cliff High. You may know him.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of Cliff, yeah.
Very, very interesting. But the conclusion that I have come to after having conducted all these interviews and this model grand jury proceeding is that much of what we're seeing is an illusion, a grand illusion. 90%, maybe more, is an illusion. And this is all done through psychological terrorism. That's why a few weeks ago, I did my own kind of deep dive into the psychology / mind control of the Great Reset, and read some of the books that are out there by this Polish author, Lobachevsky is his name, by an Canadian criminal psychologist, Robert Hare, many others. Spoke with good friends of mine. Dr. Peter Bregan is one of the psychiatrists. I have other friends who are in that field. So that's the conclusion I came to. Much of what we're seeing, if not all of what we're seeing, is a grand illusion. But the few things that we're beginning to understand, like, for example, Operation Paperclip. This is how it seems to have started. Not really, because if you take another closer look, you look at the Tavistock Institute, there was mind control there in 1913. However, it goes far beyond that. Obviously, in ancient times, people were, even then, playing around with this. So if we want to talk about some of the more palpable aspects and then try and put the dots together, what is it about mind control? Did it really start in the Third Reich, or was the Third Reich just another one of their experiments when they financed both sides of the Second World War, just like they did in the First World War?
Yeah, well, mind control. It sounds kind of, oh, God, that's deep. If a newsreader reads a story that's not true and the person watching believes it's true, that's mind control. It's simply forming the perception that will get the behavior that suits you. So you tell them what to perceive and believe, and they will respond to that. That's mind control. You can go into MK Ultra, and I did very deeply. I've talked to so many people, particularly through the end of the 90s, across the millennium, who've been in MK Ultra and put under various levels of mind control and how it works. And I'll tell you what was interesting is that I studied, obviously, mind control. I studied what they told me. I understood the techniques of how they do it. And then when COVID broke, I'm looking and I'm seeing a collective use of the same mind control techniques. It's extraordinary. But I think if I just put the dots together in terms of what this cult is, it will explain so much, and also where it's come from and where things like the knowledge of mind control has come from. The way it works, because it has to be simple and it has to be compartmentalized. So, because the more people that know, the more chance there is it's coming out. So I ask people to imagine a spider's web around the planet with a spider in the center. The spider is where it's all coming from. Immediately around the spider are the strands in the web. They are the most exclusive secret societies. People in them, and many of them don't have names because they're harder to track, will know the big, big picture of what's going on. As you come out from the spider, you're now entering, still in the unseen, you're entering the secret societies that we do know about. The Freemasons, the inner core, not Bill and Joe down the lodge. The Knights Templar, the Knights of Malta, the inner core of the Jesuit order, Opus Dei, and such like. The Skull and Bone Society in America, that's been extraordinarily influential in American politics and putting presidents into power. And that these secret societies are incredibly, like I say, compartmentalized. You only know what you need to know. And as you come out from through the hidden, and this agenda is coming out from this, quote, spider, you meet what I call the cusp in the web. And the cusp is where the hidden meets the seen. And at that cusp are organizations like the World Economic Forum, the Bilderberg Group, the Council on Foreign Relations in America, the Trilateral Commission, the United Nations at its inner core. This explosion of so-called NGOs, non-governmental organizations, and, quote, think tanks. And these two are fiercely compartmentalized. So most of the people in them just think they're doing it for one reason, when the inner core knows it's doing it for a very different and collective reason. And the job of the cusp organization is to take the agenda from the hidden and to play it out in the seen through governments, government agencies, banking systems, corporations, Silicon Valley, World Health Organization, and so on and so forth. And so when you come out into the world of the seen, and George Soros, by the way, is a big funder of a lot of these, his son's coming to the fore now, these key NGOs. So you come out to the world of the seen, and to the population, everything is random. This government's doing that, this government's doing that, this government's doing that, this agency's doing that, Silicon Valley's doing that, World Health Organization doing that. But this is the point. If you go deep enough in all these organizations, you meet the point where they attach to the web. And at that point, all these organizations are the same organizations pushing the same agenda. So this starts to explain a few things, like, why would Silicon Valley corporations like your Googles and your YouTubes and your Facebooks, as I well know, why would they say right at the start of COVID, we're going to censor anything that exposes, questions, challenges, gives another opinion about the World Health Organization narrative? Because if you thought that everything was kind of random and not connected, you think, but you're supposed to be the town square. You're supposed to be the free debate platform where we all have our opinion. What do you mean? Right at the start of COVID, you're going to censor on the basis of if it's different for the World Health Organization. But then you realized that these corporations, just look at the background to Facebook and Google and Google owning YouTube now. And you'll see that the official stories and the official narratives are not actually how they came about. Look at DARPA, the technological development arm of the Pentagon, for a start, and InQtel, the technological development arm of the CIA, and you'll see where Silicon Valley came from. But when you realize that this web connection, what was happening is Silicon Valley, created and controlled and owned by the global cold web, was censoring on behalf of the World Health Organization, which was created by this web. And then you look at Big Pharma, they were going to the CDC, the FDA, the MHRA in Britain, these drug regulatory agencies, supposed to protect the public from Big Pharma. And they were getting permission to roll out this jab initially and then to younger and younger people, which had no trials worth the name. No one knew the background. So if you were a regulatory agency that was there to protect the people, you'd go, hold on a bloody minute. What do you mean you want to roll it out? You've done no research. But when you realize the web, you realize the regulatory agencies are owned by the web cults. And so is Big Pharma. They created it through the Rockefellers. And so this regulatory agency of the cult is giving permission of the Big Pharma of the cult to play out an agenda from the cult for the whole of humanity. So everything starts to make sense once you see this web connection, because at that level they're all pushing in the same direction. And because what I did when I started to uncover this a long time ago now, is I thought, well, this didn't start 5 minutes ago. It didn't start 5 years ago, 10 years ago. When did it start? And you start to go back and you get comfortably into the ancient world, into Babylon, into Egypt, and so on. And what's been happening is that out of those areas, other areas too, and it goes back further, but you can pick it up there. You can follow it through the Roman Empire up into Northern Europe. And then through colonization from the European countries, this cult went global. It went out across the world, not least the British Empire, and it took over the world. And then you had this sleight of hand, that's what it was, where it seemed that the former colonies were given, quote, independence. No, no, no. What was left out there was the secret society network and particular bloodlines, interbreeding bloodlines that are crucial to this cult. And they've gone on controlling those countries ever since. So by the time we hit COVID, there was one or two exceptions, not many, as you well know. You had this global response. And it's like, well, is no one got another way of looking at this? Why is everyone doing the same? Because this cult is orchestrating it. So after the colonization takeover, you then had globalization. Globalization is the centralization of power in every area of our lives, to the point now where it's just basically a handful of people, a handful of super, super rich billionaires and corporations are running the show. And it's a simple dynamic. The more you centralize power, that's why they do it, the more power the few at the center have over the many. The more diversity of decision-making you've got, the less control you have at the center. So they don't want diversity of decision-making. They want a world government, as I'm sure we'll come to. And the other dynamic is the more you centralize power, the more power you have at the center to centralize even quicker. So the speed of centralization has got faster and faster. And we've now reached the point where this cult has infiltrated such a vast area of human society that it's moving as one unit. And, you know, just finally on this point, you know, people have said to me over the years, a few people can't control the world. What? Do you know the sad thing? It's a doddle. And it's a doddle because of this reason, and only because of this reason. If people can just imagine a pyramid, at the top of the pyramid is the inner core of this cult. And you get that into a single room. And then you come down the pyramid and you've got the mass of humanity at the bottom. Now, what happens is how do the few dictate the lives of billions? Through two things: imposition and acquiescence to the imposition. So you've got this inner core of the cult, and it imposes its will, see, coming out from the spider symbolically, on the next level. And that acquiesces to that imposition and then imposes on the next level. And very soon after you come down from that pyramid peak, you're meeting levels of the pyramid that have no idea there even is a cult. They just perceive that their superiors are telling them to do this, so they do it. And you come down the pyramid, imposition, acquiescence, imposition, acquiescence, imposition, acquiescence. And then you reach the mass of the population. COVID's such a wonderful example. And if we as a human population acquiesce to that level of the pyramid that seeks to impose upon us, this is governments, government agencies, and so on, World Health Organization, then we complete a circuit between 8 billion people and a handful in a single room, which imposes their will upon the entire population. Without human acquiescence, it could not happen. How do you get human acquiescence? One, control perception. You get vast numbers of people just to do whatever authority tells them. Number two, another group that says, I really don't want to do it, but what are the consequences for me of not doing it? So they do it. And those two mentalities have been responsible for every tyranny in history, and they're responsible for this one. Because 8 billion people cannot be controlled by a handful unless the 8 billion acquiesce in vast numbers. So that mentality, which has ended every tyranny in history and will end this one, is that which can see it, perceptually they awaken to see it, and says, I'm not cooperating with it. And the bigger that number is, the more the house of cards will come down. Because it is. We're standing there, the human population, and we're holding the house of cards up, thinking the people at the top of the house of cards, or the pyramid of cards we're holding up, have the power. What? We have the power. The power that authority imposes upon us is simply human acquiescence to the perception of their power. They have none. They only have ours. So this gives me great encouragement, because powerful as this cult seems to be, it's actually powerless when people stop acquiescing to authority just because it's authority.
David, this makes perfect sense. I agree. That's the only thing we have to understand. But in order to get there, some of the people who are still sitting on the fence, some of the people who are on our side of the fence need to understand that which is palpable. For example, how do they do this? What about the shots? I get bored with that, because I don't want to talk the umpteenth time about how they misused the PCR test in order to create cases that didn't exist. I don't want to talk about whether or not this is personality changing. I don't want to talk about whether this is going to make people infertile. We know that it does. We have to step beyond this, because we're wasting our time talking about the same things over and over and over again, simply because it's so fascinating to see how blatantly they manipulated us and made us believe in totally idiotic concepts. If we don't understand the whole picture, if we don't see that, we're not going to be able to get out of this self-created illusion. So in that sense, I'm extremely glad that you have put the dots together. It makes perfect sense to me, and it coincides with everything that I've learned over the last 3 years. I didn't learn anything before that, except that I knew something's not right in my profession, being an attorney, being a trial attorney. I always knew there's something terribly wrong, but I used to think that maybe it has to do with the people who work for me, with myself, my suit, my women lawyers' dresses. It didn't have anything to do with anything. It had everything to do with the pyramid that you just described about acquiescence, for example. Dagmar, you want to ask a question?
Yes, two actually. David, I think you had a very big impact on this whole enlightenment of humanity. So I wonder, do you feel protected by some power? Because actually, we know what they are doing with people who go in their way. They just disappear, So you are still there after 30 years. I mean, that's a miracle somehow. That's my first question. The other question, like what I was watching in my life, why people acquiesce? Because they are afraid that they are doomed to poverty, to destruction when they don't acquiesce. Yeah, when they don't work how they are told, when they are not have their insurances. So I married very early, with 19, a man who was older, who was a politician. And then I was for 5 years with these people together. And I saw I'm not interested in this kind of people and in this kind of life. But I also saw that in every job you want to have a career, you have to sell your soul. You have to sell your soul. And I was interested to find my soul and to live my soul. And I took the prize that I said, I'm not interested in a career. But most people are interested more in their career, to have their holidays twice a year, to have a house, this and that, and they don't feel that they have the power to survive with all that insurances and paid jobs. They have this fear deep inside of them. And I think this comes from all these wars. This is a trauma situation, that they are not connected with their self and with their power. And since a few years, I I see this, that the main reason for war is this mass traumatization, because through a war, everybody's traumatized. Yeah,
I agree absolutely with the second one. That what was said there about the second one. You know, people talk about being frozen with fear, and it is a freeze vibration. Fear is a very, very low, slow vibration, and you do get the feeling of almost being frozen with the density of fear, and it can literally freeze you, and that's the currency of control is fear. If you can get people, it's a simple psychological thing. And, you know, I've studied psychology so much because this is where it's all coming from. The psychology, the control of psychology.
Absolutely.
If you can get people in a state of fear because they are manipulated to feel insecure, I'm just little me, I've got no power, they will look outside of themselves for someone or something to protect them from what they've been manipulated to fear. So in COVID, they were looking to doctors, I mean, please. They were looking to authority to protect them from COVID because they feared. People who didn't fear COVID were going about their lives. I mean, I was going to London and talking to like tens of thousands of people in Trafalgar Square and everything. I must have hugged thousands of people. Never had so much as a bloody sniffle in that entire period, you know. And I'm 71, so I'm one of the vulnerables. Well, I'm vulnerable if I perceive I'm vulnerable, not if I'm not, you know. And so because they know that your perception not only dictates your behavior, it dictates your sense of self. And if they can get you to feel powerless, then you're not going to do anything about what's happening because you don't think you have the power to do it. So the whole thing is psychological, and we've been manipulated to believe that what has to happen is we have to have a savior and we have to have middlemen and women. They're called politicians or they're called people in authority. For anything to change, we have to go via them. So what we do is we say, okay, I'm going to vote for party A. Okay, oh no, they're not doing what I thought they'd do, so I'm going to vote for party B. Oh no, they're doing the same as party A. So how do I get rid of party B? Oh, you go and vote for party A. And so it goes on and on and on and on. And they say, oh, Labour Party, Conservative, Republicans, Democrats. We're living in one-party states. At the level of the cult, there's not even any borders, never mind, presidents and prime ministers. And the idea is to get people to believe that the political way is the answer. So you're looking for a savior. And what happens is nothing changes. You vote for them, the agenda moves on. You vote for another party, the agenda might move on quicker, like with Biden in the United States, but it moves on in the same direction. And what that's hiding is you don't need politicians to save you. What you need is the word no. You know, people think yes, that's positive and no is negative. Well, yes is how we got here.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, sir. No, sir. Anything you say, sir. Oh, house arrest, sir. Yes, sir. No is the word that's going to free us. No, I'm not cooperating with that. I said many times going back into the 1990s. So someone comes out the White House or Downing Street or whatever, and they say, we've had a discussion and this is what's going to happen. If enough people say, not doing it, not doing it, where's their power? And one of the things they're terrified of is the population realizing that. So they'll push and they'll push. And if the resistance gets too much, they'll ease off. They'll take the steam out of it and then they'll come again. It's what they're doing with COVID, because they don't want to alert enough people to see where the power is. It's with us. How can 8 billion be controlled by a handful? unless the 8 billion acquiesce to that. And in terms of the first question, yes, I think I am protected. I think I wouldn't have got this far unless I was, but there's another element to it. When I started coming out with this stuff, and I had my head exploded in 1990, early 1991. And it was like someone came along, and it's like you've been living in a bubble all your life, and someone came along with a pin and went, they didn't give you any warning, they just popped it. And suddenly reality changed. And it was for about 3 months, I was hanging on, trying to understand what was happening. All these concepts, insights, things were coming into my conscious mind. And it was like pressing too many keys on the computer. The computer said, can't process it, I'm shutting down. And in that 3 months, I went on a primetime chat show in Britain called The Wogan Show in 1991. And all hell broke loose. And I went through the most enormous ridicule. So in terms of being a problem to them, it didn't seem that I was going to be. I not really have to bother with me much, because I'm saying these things, and the public in general are going, you're mad. That David Icke off the BBC, he's gone bloody mad here. So it was kind of very comfortable. And it gave me a honeymoon period to go around and research and to pick up and pick up and pick up. And now, you know, particularly after 9/11, but then again with COVID massively, people have seen that maybe I'm not so mad after all. But by this time, I'm out there. My books are out there. And it'd be very difficult to do anything to me physically without giving me massive credibility. And it's all out there now. So that's part of it. But I do think I'm protected. I do feel really protected. I have no fear of these people whatsoever. I think they're pathetic. Anyone who is so insecure that they feel the need to impose their will on an entire population is pathetic. And the other thing, and this is another part of my life, a really important part. When I went through historic levels of ridicule in the early 1990s and then on through the 1990s, it cleared me of the prison that most people live in. And that's the fear of what other people think. Because most people are not living their life. They're not living their opinion, their perception. They're living what others say they should be. So the worst kind of censorship is self-censorship, because there's no debate, there's nothing, you just don't say it. And so many people are living their lives thinking, going through the mental gymnastics, how do I say this? What do I leave out so they don't think I'm crazy, or they don't think I'm a bad person and all that. Well, that extraordinary level of ridicule I went through. I mean, I could walk down any street, even in my own town, without being laughed at and pointed at, people making faces behind my back. And this went on for years and years and years and years and years. But it cleared me out of that fear of what other people think. And so what you then do is you open your mouth and you say what you think. You're not saying to people, you must believe it. You're not saying to people, oh, I'm the guru, you must listen to me. You're saying, this is what I think. This is the evidence to support it. And you don't care how they receive it. You really don't. Because they have a right, as you do, to perceive you as they see fit and what you say as they see fit. So it's their business, not mine, what they think of me. And it's such an unbelievable freedom to the mental gymnastics goes, the fear, or what will people say goes. And, you know, when I was younger, I had a fear of, speaking in public, even a small group. Now I speak to thousands and thousands, 45,000 in Trafalgar Square during the COVID thing. And it's like talking to one person. Why? Because if you ask most people their biggest fear, it's the fear of what other people think. And it's the fear of speaking in public. And the two are completely connected, because you fear speaking in public because you are giving your power away to the audience. And you're going, hope they think I'm right. Hope they don't think I'm mad, or hope they agree with me and all that stuff. Or, hope they don't start heckling. And that makes you frightened of speaking in public. But when you let that go, you believe what you like. This is me, and it's the only one. So believe what you like, but I'm going to say what I believe here. Then you lose that fear of what other people think, and the power comes back to you instead of being with the audience. And you not only lose your fear of what other people think, you lose your fear of speaking in public. And all these things are connected. And what they're trying to do all the time is to make us little me people who think that other people have the answers and we don't. Other people have power and we don't. And the opposite is true if only we take it back. There's a lion inside everybody trying to get out, and fear stops it doing so.
At this point of our discussion, I've just realized that it did. I mean, yes, my friend Dexter Reinefeld, he's an attorney from South Africa, and I and all the other international attorneys were working on getting out the whole picture, the not just the pieces of the puzzle, but the whole story in a legal proceeding, because this is what people expect. We're talking about justice. Ultimately, there will be justice. Justice will have to be done. However, you won't get justice inside the system, which you have just described, because it's the spider web. It's totally under their control. So we'll have to step outside the system and probably into a system that not just provides the legal framework as we think it should be as lawyers, but also connects with spirituality or consciousness, whatever you want to call it. Step outside the system so that they will not be able to touch us. Dexter's example was, you can't fight as an eagle. You can't fight a snake and win against it if you come down and fight it at the ground. You have to pick it up into the air, which is where it can't survive if you really want to destroy it. And ultimately, I think this is what this is about. It's about either them or us. We have to either destroy them or they will destroy us. And this is what people have to understand. My question is, I was going to ask you about Operation Paperclip and 9/11 and all that, but I don't think it matters.
That's all part of it. That's all part of it.
Obviously. But my real question is, because we're beyond this, we've talked about this in so many different sessions. We've spoken to people like Andrew Johnson, whose stuff is based on Dr. Judy Wood. You've spoken to him, I think. There's so many people out there who know that 9/11 is engineered. It wasn't real. They designed it in order to be able to create the war on terror so that their vast armies would still have a raison d'etre, because there is none. There is none, really. But here's the real question. This has been going on for a long time. It does seem as though it is finally coming to a head right now. What is it that makes them, in my view, them meaning the other side, what is it that makes them panic in the manner that they're panicking, trying to make us believe that the sexualization of children is the new normal? Even child abuse is the new normal. What's going on right now?
Well, they've been taking over our society over a long period of time and going step by step towards their ultimate goal. And I have this phrase, know the outcome and you'll see the journey. Mm-hmm. If you don't know the outcome, then everything seems random. When you know what the outcome is planned to be, the random becomes very clear stepping stones to that outcome. And so the outcome is planned to be, first of all, a different type of human, far more synthetic in nature. This is why synthetic biology is a massively expanding area of science. And this is all connected into the jabs as well, as you will have talked to many people about this. And up to this point, they have had to control information to manipulate perception, because perception is what they're after. They want a technological way of controlling perception, so they don't have to do all this manipulation of information. So religions served the perceptual indoctrination very well, and now we've got science, which is overwhelmingly not science at all in its true sense. Yeah. But what they want, and this is why they're now coming out with it, they've gone from hiding it to sales pitching it. They want to connect artificial intelligence to the human brain and the human body so that our perceptions will come direct, not manipulated, direct. You will think what AI thinks. And so you have this guy, Ray Kurzweil, at Google, the so-called futurist. And, people say, oh, he's got an 80% accuracy in predicting the future. Well, if you know what the plan is, there's a bloody good chance you're going to be right, isn't it? I mean, people say to me, how did you predict all this? Well, because I uncovered the plan. I'm not predicting the future. I'm predicting what the plan wants. Yeah. And if nothing intervenes in the plan, it will become the future.
Big difference.
My goal is not to be proved right. It's to prove wrong. Oh, it's not happening. Oh, thank God for that. That was the idea. And we are now reaching a point where we've got a chance of making that happen. Because I said a lot of years ago, this has got to get really bad before we turn this around. Because it's got to be here in people's faces before they think, well, I can't look the other way anymore. It's so impacting on my life. We've got to do something. So the numbers are going to grow rapidly. We're going into a period of absolute chaos and upheaval that's manipulated by these people. But we're also going into a period where lots and lots of people who resisted looking at the world in the way that it is are going to start seeing it. So what they want to do is connect AI to the human brain. Because like I say, what Kurzweil was saying, and this, he said this a few years ago, that by 2030, this is a big year in their calendar, if you like, in their wish list. By 2030, people will be connected to artificial intelligence, and then artificial intelligence will do more and more of human thinking until human thinking as we know it is basically negligible. And because, like I say, they've been hiding it and doing it under the radar, but there comes a point where you can't hide it anymore, because if you're going to transform human society, then you have to transform human society in a way that people can see it. 15-minute cities, what's going on? Oh, that's what we're seeing now. And so at that point, you go from hiding it to sales pitching it. And that's why Kurzweil's saying, oh, we connect to artificial intelligence, we'll be godlike and superhuman. No, we'll be subhuman, and you know it, mate. And so the whole transformation of the human body to a more synthetic type is all connected into this AI operation, because they want to turn us basically into computers on their internet. And this connects in to why they are putting tens of thousands of low orbit satellites to fire this, what they call the cloud, what Kurzweil calls the cloud, at every inch of the planet. So that our mission control, where we get our perceptions from, will be the cloud, not expanded awareness. It will be the cloud. And this, I mean, because I remember when I was born in 1952 and I was growing up in the 50s, if you look at the technological radiation that was in the atmosphere then, it was a tiny fraction of what it is now. And the human body is reaching a point that, as we perceive it in a biological sense, where it's struggling more and more to handle that. So that they want to move the human body into a different form that can handle this this AI technological radiation world. And where this is how this all fits into the transgender thing. Aldous Huxley wrote in Brave New World, and this is a point about Huxley and of George Orwell. How did they know? Because they were so accurate in predicting. Well, because for the same reason that I know, and I don't know how deeply they were into it, but for the same reason that I know, is they'd accessed this this plan, this cult, and so they were talking about technology. Huxley in 1932 with Brave New World, and Eric Blair, George Orwell in 1948. That was nowhere near being real then, but now it is. It's like, what? Because there's two streams of knowledge. There's the cult stream of knowledge and technological knowledge, which is light years ahead of anything the public's allowed to see. Whatever technology comes into the public arena, the real cutting edge within this level of knowledge is way ahead, waiting to come out. This is why we've seen this technological control system rolling out faster and faster and faster, where there's nobody sitting around the table strumming their fingers saying, well, we've got to wait now until some geek in a garage in Silicon Valley invents the next level of control. No, it's coming out faster and faster, more and more sophisticated all the time, because it already exists and they're rolling it out. So people like Huxley knew what was coming, and Orwell knew what was coming. And what Huxley talked about was the no gender human, where human procreation was no longer done in the way that we know it, but it was done technologically. Now that's the technology to do that is coming online, even in the public arena, never mind what's sitting there waiting to come out. And so if you're going to go from human 1.0, and this jab is massively part of that with the self-replicating nanosystems, you're going to go from human 1.0, the biological human as we know it, to the non-procreating, far more synthetic human, then you have to psychologically go there before you can physically go there. And you know that the kids today are going to be the adults when you really want to play this out. So that's why they're going for the kids. So if you're going to fuse gender, which is what they're doing, you first have to confuse gender. And so what they're doing is targeting the kids to completely confuse their perception of gender. BBC talks about 100 different genders. I mean, that's mental illness. So if you want to confuse a little kid about gender, then what better way to do it than a bloke with a beard wearing a dress, a drag queen? So suddenly, again, all over the world, so everybody had the same idea. No, the cult agenda had the same idea. You introduce drag queens into schools, reading stories to little kids, and then you get them strutting their stuff in the next stage, as we see so often in America. And what it's about is confusing gender so that you can move to a fusion of gender. Now, if you have a non-procreating human in the sense that we know it up to this point, you don't need men and you don't need women. So when they started targeting men, toxic masculinity, and part of that is to reduce the testosterone levels so people don't stand up and say no. But I said when they started targeting men, they'll come for the women next, because they don't need either in this brave new world of the human 2.0. And so then the political correct hierarchy now is dominated by transgender. What these activists need to realize is they're being played like a stringed instrument. Some of them will know, but the vast majority won't, because transgender is not where it's meant to lead to. It's meant to lead to no gender humans created technologically and brought up by the state to be perceptually completely in control of the state, just as Huxley described in the world hatchery system he talked about. And so the transgender is not an end, it's a stepping stone to the end. And
To
transgender
post-humanism, really.
move aside for no gender, just as women and men are now moving aside for transgender. It's a journey.
Yeah, that's what Patrick Wood says too. Trans means it's a transition to something else, and that's post-human. Now, the big question is, what is it? Is it just our waking up in masses now that puts them under so much pressure that they have to take off their masks and show what they're really all about? Or is there something else going on?
Well, I look at this in a slightly different way. You know, for instance, when I look at mass censorship, I don't see power, I see weakness. They're mass censoring not to express their power, but to defend themselves from awakening people. If you are secure, these people are incredibly insecure. They might strut around like Klaus bloody Schwab or Bill Gates. Oh yeah, we're in control. Actually, they're very insecure people. You show me a control freak, and I'll show you an insecure person, because control freaks want to control everything because they're so insecure. Secure people don't want to control everything. They're just quite happy for everyone to have a different opinion and what have you. Security doesn't need censorship. Insecurity needs censorship. So they're censoring to protect their narrative, because if you have to control the perception of the population to get what you want, and when there's a few controlling the many, that's absolutely essential, then you don't want other possibilities circulating that might give people a different perception. That's where all censorship is coming from. So they're not powerful people. They are terrified people, and they're terrified of people waking up. And whenever I see them symbolically, you know, those in amusement arcades, you have the heads coming up through the holes, and you have a hammer, and you're supposed to knock heads. This is what they're doing. And as more and more people wake up, there's more and more heads to deal with. So they are in a race. This is why they're really pushing on now. Mm-hmm. They're in a race to get artificial intelligence connected to the human brain so they can go, phew, we got. Because while people have the perceptual ability to change perception and not have it artificially induced, then this can come down. I mean, it's simple mathematics. 8 billion can't be controlled by a handful unless the 8 billion acquiesce. We stop the acquiescence, it's over. And I'm confident in this sense that we're about, I mean, it's madness now. I mean, crazy. I mean, the whole thing's crazy. I mean, you interact with institutions as a matter of course, you know, like whether it's the gas people or the electric people. And you're dealing with automatons. They have no capacity for free thought. Might as well be AI now. Yeah. And it's going to get mad. It's going to get crazy. There's going to be great upheavals and what have you. But in that happening, people are going to see what they couldn't see before. Because what happened with COVID is this cult entered the room. It walked into the room. It's been hiding behind it entered the room, and it heard the door click behind it. So it ain't going back now. And once it entered the room, put itself on public display for so many more people than ever before, it then has to try to get to its conclusion, AI control of the human mind, as fast as it can. And they're panicking and rushing it. And the more they rush it, like this thing in London with the mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, they've introduced this ULEZ zone where people are being charged £12.50 a day for using a car that is supposed to be emitting more than what the zone says you can emit. And people are going around taking the bloody cameras down and disabling the cameras, hundreds of them. And it's happening more and more. And what happens is, you know, you go about your life and, oh, no, yeah, well, I'm not really bothered about that. You know, when's the football on, you know? And then someone comes along and says, every time you use your car, £12.50. And now it's here. Okay, I'm not having that. So the more extreme it gets, the more people will see that it's extreme and will start to respond to it. So it's interesting we're talking at this point, because we really are at the cusp of and the fork in the road, where we can still make decisions that will bring the house of cards down, or we can go on as we are, and the house of cards will be run by AI.
Here's another thing that has been on my mind for a while now, because it's just now become a very prominent topic to talk about: Antarctica. And this has come to my attention because of the interview we did with Cliff High, but it's also been out in the open now for quite a while. It's been such a huge secret. Everybody knew, yes, there's something, people made expeditions to Antarctica, but one of the things that has been out in the open, but I couldn't have made any sense of it, is that expedition that an American, was it a general or an admiral, made to Antarctica in 1954.
Admiral Byrd, yeah.
Admiral Byrd, that's his name, in 1954. But it wasn't an expedition. It was a military thing, because he was with him. He had helicopters, he had tanks, he had carriers, he had everything to fight a war. But they didn't tell the people that they were expecting military resistance, but they did. So this is no conspiracy theory, because it's out in the open. And this guy, when he returned, said, well, if we're ever going to have a third world war, we can't win it, because there's people out there who have these discs, these flying discs that can go back and forth between the poles in no time. So connected with this is the myth, which I don't know if it's true or not, but that there's a lot of evidence that points in that direction, that after World War II, some of the German scientists went there and set up a new a camp of sorts, and continued with some of their scientific experiments, continued building these flying discs, the UFOs. But there also seems to be an entrance, not just on that side of the Earth, but on the other side as well, an entrance into the hollow Earth. That's what some people say. And there's another civilization there. And if there isn't another civilization there, if that is true, then the question comes up, are we only seeing what we're supposed to see? Only the puppets, the Bill Gateses, the Klaus Schwabs, and the Khazarians, like the Rothschilds and whoever? And is there really another much higher power behind all of this? What can you get a sense of this?
I've been saying for a long, long time, if you can see them, they're nowhere near the top of the hierarchy. The real hierarchy is outside of human sight, which, for reasons I'll come to, is almost everywhere. And you know, the thing about Nazi Germany and America and Australia and China is that this cult is global. It does not have borders. They're for public consumption. So if you look at the background to the Nazis, they were massively funded from the United States by a massive network of what we now call billionaires. And the Rockefellers were once again right in there. The Bush family were right in there as well. No accident that they produced two presidents, because presidents are selected, not elected. That's another kind of myth that people fall for. And just very quickly on the no borders, I've been saying since the end of the 1990s, if you want to see what's planned for the West tomorrow, look at China today. And never has that been more the case. This is my view. This cult was behind the Mao Revolution and the Cultural Revolution that followed. Why? Because they wanted to create a closed society, which it was for a very long time, which was fiercely centrally controlled, within which whatever the leader said happened, while the West, until COVID that is, was having to pay lip service to freedom and democracy. They could only move at a certain speed. But in China, they could move at breakneck speed. This is happening, that's happening, that's happening. And the idea was to use China to incubate and develop a system of mass human control, not least based on technology, that once perfected could be played out across the world. And then you have the whole COVID thing linked to China. And of course, when you look at the West since that time in 2020, the West has become more and more like China. We're seeing China play out. You've got a situation where the corporations of America and Europe too have outsourced production to China and the East, giving them control of the supply chain. This is all connected because these corporations that have done that, on the face of it, it's like, oh yeah, but it's cheaper. Well, yeah, well, that's one reason, and it's the cover story. The real reason is the powers moving to China. And this thing in this war in Ukraine and Russia is all part of it. I was saying from the late 1990s, the plan is to bring the East and West into conflict, and for the power in the world to move from West to East into China and Russia and India and all that area, and that's exactly what's unfolding before our eyes. So there's no borders. There is a cult agenda. So it appears that America and Europe has gone to war with the Nazis, but the key people in the cult within those countries is funding and is behind the Nazis, because wars are fantastic examples of something I call creative destruction. If you're going to move the world in the direction that you want, you have to keep destroying status quos, because status quos, especially when they solidify, like cultures and what have you, they are blocks on moving on towards your goal. You have to destroy them. So wars are fantastic. You have a status quo, you destroy it through a war, whatever, and then you have a new status quo. Like after the First World War, the world was a different place. After the Second World War, you had the IMF, the World Bank emerged, the United Nations, all these institutions. The world was a different place as a result of the Second World War. And you keep destroying status quos. Now, when they brought the COVID card out, they destroyed the status quo. And what they're doing with the human-caused climate change hoax, which is scientific baloney, is they're destroying the status quo. This is what they're doing all the time, creative destruction. And at every status quo takes them closer and closer to where they want to go. So what they're doing, as I mentioned earlier, is they are focusing people's attention in what I call the postage stamp consensus. It's a narrow band of perception of possibility in the world and self. And they're operating out here. And they're operating on a level of knowledge and awareness, not least technological knowledge, that is vastly superior to anything that people think is possible. And so one of the things I learned in the 1990s when I was traveling around America and meeting all these whistleblowers and people that were talking to me because no one else would talk to them, I realized then very clearly from a number of different people that what we call flying saucers are being flown by humans. I mean, you mentioned the Nazis and all those stories and accounts of how they developed what's called anti-gravity technology. And then through Project Paperclip, all those Nazi scientists, including Werner von Braun of the moon landing fame with his Saturn V rockets, and what happened is these scientists, they created what we call NASA. They should have called it Nazi, not NASA. And that technology, that knowledge went with them. And what these whistleblowers were telling me from the 1990s, met lots of them, is that flying saucers are in the underground bases, but because and other secret projects, but because everything is so fiercely compartmentalized, most of the people, even in the military, don't know that this is the case. They're completely cut off from this level of knowledge. And so when people look at in the sky, and I'm not saying that non-human, quote, alien interaction with this reality is not happening. My God, of me of all people won't say that. But when you look in the sky and you see something that is a technology that appears to be in something humans don't know how to create, which is moving at speeds and changing direction, and you go, God, that's got to be alien. Well, not necessarily so. If you can, like I keep saying, if you can keep people in ignorance of the technological cutting edge, then you can play them like a violin in terms of getting them to believe something's alien when it's not. And this connects into Antarctica and all this stuff. The technological cutting edge is light years beyond at any point where we see it in the public arena. And there was a guy in Canada called Serge Monast. You probably come across him, who he died of a heart attack at the age in his 50s, the day after he'd been in prison overnight. And he was an investigative journalist who uncovered this plan called Project Bluebeam, which was to create, using high technology that the public didn't know exists, so they believed it was real, that there was some kind of alien invasion coming. And what I found interesting, first of all, if there was an alien invasion and people believed it, then they would support the centralization of everything to meet the threat. And during the 1990s, when I was investigating a lot of this stuff in America, this UFO stuff, the government was completely dismissive of it. It's like, oh no, it's a weather balloon. Oh, don't be stupid. Aliens? What? Little green men? Whoa. But suddenly, Reiner, you'll notice in the last 2-3 years, suddenly the military are letting it and go out into the public arena. You've had these guys, whistleblowers on Capitol Hill, talking about biological alien bodies and craft and all that stuff. And we need to watch that very carefully, that they're not going to spring that one on us. But if you can keep the cutting edge from people, you can manipulate them completely, and you can also get the reaction to people like me who are saying this is what they're doing. That's crazy. That's impossible. But it's not. It's just what people believe is possible because that's what they're told.